I'm really thankful that the Lord has given us this chance to gather in this manner. As I've said before, I think testimony meeting is one of the most important meetings that we hold. We don't hold it on a regular, like weekly basis or even a monthly basis, but it is important for us to remember that we are an assembly before the Lord. We are not a one-man mission. We are not a several-man mission. We are an assembly. And as an assembly, we need to come together and know what each family, what each individual is going through. And it's a blessing for us to hear both the burdens and the joys of what everyone is going through. And we heard a little mix of that today. And we definitely want to keep all these matters in prayer, especially Joy Chan. And I know that Uncle is really struggling, and so we want to keep both Joy Chan and Nandi in prayer as they go through this. It's good to see Papa Shton and Nandi here as well. We know that they've had some hard times these last few weeks, but it's such an encouragement to see them here today. And everyone else that was also discussed, I know, some of our younger families are going through some transition, and that's also it's a difficulty. I want to share a quick word of encouragement. I'm going to run over. I'm just going to tell you now I'm going to run over. I can't do anything in 10 minutes. There's no way I can finish in 10 minutes, so we'll see how far this goes. Okay. I want to look at a passage that has been in my heart these last few weeks. Many already shared with us the changes in our life, and it is a huge transition. Isn't it so funny when you hear our different families are going through things? Saumya is struggling with Nathaniel going to kindergarten. I'm struggling with Jake going to college. Saji and Bilsi are struggling with Leah living home. See, everyone's in a different stage of their life, but the concerns are very, very similar. And I think it's good to see and hear what we all struggle with. We are a people who love to think about tomorrow. We're very good at that. At the same time, we ignore what's happening today, and we easily forget what happened yesterday. It's funny because the Lord tells us very clearly that we have no control over what happens tomorrow. All the anxieties, the multitude of anxieties that we read about in Psalm 94 are really anxieties about what tomorrow may hold. But the Lord gives us every confidence, every hope that the one thing that we know for sure for tomorrow is that He will be there. The same God who is the same yesterday, today, and forever is the same God who has walked us along with us these many, many days. So the passage I want to share with you, again, we'll make this very quick, is in James chapter 4, very familiar passage, James chapter 4, verses 13 to 17. The title of my message today is, Lord willing, we shall live. James chapter 4 and verse 13, it says, Come now, you who say today or tomorrow we will go to such and such a city, spend a year there, buy and sell, and make a profit, whereas you do not know what will happen tomorrow. For what is your life? It is even a vapor that appears for a little time and then vanishes away. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we shall live and do this or that. But now you boast in your arrogance. All such boasting is evil. Therefore, to him who knows to do good and does not do it, to him it is sin. I was just thinking about this phrase about how we think about tomorrow and we plan about tomorrow, and yet we have so little control about what's going to happen tomorrow. So today's Saturday, tomorrow is Sunday. We know that tomorrow we have our planned meeting, we have Sunday school in the morning, we have worship in the morning, and then we have our family hour, and all these little, sort of aspects of our life that we set up for tomorrow. Just in my own life, I know that, we have worship tomorrow, so we have to get all the things arranged for that. Next week is youth retreat, and that has been a big thing in my mind for the last 2 years. You know why it's been going on? We were initially supposed to have one in January. Actually, last September, we were supposed to have youth retreat. Then we moved it to January. That got canceled. We had a one-day retreat. So it's all part of the same, sort of anxiety that gets building. And it's funny because I have no control over these things. I think about what Jake is going through, right? I'm blessed with the fact that I have a son who cares very little about tomorrow. And that is a great anxiety for me, right? Because I feel like I have to carry his anxiety because he doesn't seem to, worry about tomorrow. Some of us have that blessing. I don't have that blessing. I don't have that gift where I can forget about what happens tomorrow. All I can think about is, it's funny, we dropped Jake off last weekend, and since Jake has left, we've called him about 50 times. He's called us twice, okay? That's the balance of the anxieties that are happening in our life at the moment. But the Lord says that we have no control over what's going to happen tomorrow. What is our life? Our life is so momentary, it's so transient, that for us to try and build up our anxieties to say that we can somehow manage the risk that is in there for tomorrow is futile, especially when we do that in the absence of an acknowledgement of God being in that presence. We see three very special truths in these passages. Verses 13 to 14, we say that it's interesting. You read verse 13, it says, "Come now," you say, "today or tomorrow we will go to such and such city, spend the year there, buy and sell, and make a profit." What's missing? There's nothing there that you would, if you showed that to a person, you took this verse out of context and showed that to someone in the world and say, we're going to make plans, we're going to go there, we're going to start a business, we're going to make a profit. Is there any sin there? What's the only problem with verse 13? There's no mention of God. There's no mention of God at all. In fact, it seems like everything that we plan and we do in the absence of God. And brothers and sisters, this is my problem, this is your problem, this is our problem, is that we try to manage our future in the absence of God. Verse 14 is very stark. It says, "Whereas you do not know." We don't know. We have a complete lack of knowledge about tomorrow. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I don't know if I'm going to get up in the morning. I don't know if worship is going to happen. I don't know if family Bible. I don't know. This week I sent Kevin a text. I said, "Hey Kevin, we're praying for you." Kevin didn't reply. Kevin's not great on texts, okay? So I'm like, this was my way of subtly reminding him that we're having, message tomorrow, because again, as part of our responsibility, we want to make sure all these things are happening. I know Kevin's going to be there, and I know he's going to give the message, and I think it's going to be awesome. But I don't know, right? I don't know any of these things for sure, right? The lack of knowledge is the first thing that we see. We are completely unaware of the ignorance that we have for the future. We believe we know what's going to happen tomorrow, right? I have this confidence that all these things are going to happen tomorrow. Youth retreat's going to happen next week. All these things that we have planned for the next, couple of months are going to happen. But the truth is, I have no assurance that any of those things are going to happen. And why is that? Because our lives, James talks about is, what is your life? For what is your life? It is a mere vapor that appears for a little time and then vanishes away. This is not the only place in the Word where our lives are described in such a almost, sort of meaningless way. Psalm 78:39 calls us a wind. Our life is a wind. 1 Peter 1:24-25 calls our life like grass, like a flower that lives for some time and then fades away. 1 Chronicles 29:15 says it's like a shadow. Our life is like a shadow. Job 7:6 says it's like a breath. When you look at all these things, our lives are like the most momentary, meaningless, transient things in the world. But if you read the rest of those verses, what is the comparison that is being made? Our life may be momentary, but there is God. We have a God who makes our life full of meaning. We have a God who, even though our life is like vapor, makes that vapor something amazing, something special, something filled with blessing because of God's very presence in it. And brothers and sisters, this is why this is so important. We cannot take one step forward if we do not have God to help us take that step forward. That's why we go to the second important truth. We need to acknowledge that God is involved and overseeing our lives. Verse 15, instead we ought to say what? If the Lord wills, we shall live and do this or that. This is a powerful phrase. If the Lord wills it. God willing. Lord willing. We have a lot of brothers and sisters who use that phrase always, right? Brother, are you coming for the meeting this week? God willing. Now let me ask you a question. When someone says that to you, what do you hear in your brain? I'll tell you what I'll hear in my brain. I'm not sure I'm coming. In fact, I'm probably not going to come. But if God makes it all perfect, it's going to happen. That's what I hear, right? If you ever lived in the Middle East, right? What do people say all the time in the Middle East? Inshallah, right? I'm not saying that, pronouncing that right? But inshallah means that's their way of saying God willing, if God wills it. But if you read the cultural way that phrase is used, it's really a way of avoiding the question, right? If I ask you, brother, are you coming to church this week? And you say, God willing, in my mind, I'm hearing, probably not. Because if you were definitely sure you were coming, what would you say? Yes, I'm coming. Or if you know for sure you're not coming, you say, no. Though that sounds kind of rude, right? Especially when the elder of the assembly comes to you and says, are you coming to the church this week? You don't want to tell the elder, no, I'm not coming. So I say, Lord willing, God willing. That's not the right way to use that phrase. My kids know that if they ask me something, right? If my kids come to me and say, Dad, can I go, lately it's all been about, can I go and be with my friends for tonight? Jake used to say, can I go and hang out? Or, they'll ask me, Mark will ask me, can I go watch TV? And they know that if I say this phrase, if I say, I'll think about it, they know the answer is no. Okay? They know that the answer is no. Even though I'm not saying no, I'm saying I'm thinking about it. They know that what the problem is. I'm thinking about it long enough that it does, the question goes away. This is how we use this phrase, God willing, Lord willing. We use it as almost a throwaway phrase for us to avoid the responsibility of what's happening. When we use that phrase, it should be as it is here. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, what happens? What happens if the Lord wills? We shall live and do this or that. So it is in God's will that we live. So in other words, we live for Him. We live for the purposes that He wants us to live for. We don't live for ourselves. We don't make a profit for ourselves. Every aspect of our life is done to glorify God. So the next time you use that phrase, Lord willing, make it a prayer. Not a throwaway phrase that you use to avoid responsibility. And then the third and most final important truth is that attitude is important. Verse 16, but now you boast in your arrogance. All such boasting is evil. See, this is how we think about the future, right? We think we have a firm grasp on how the future is going to be managed. And that is a boast against God. When you say that you think you know what's going to happen tomorrow, you are taking the place of God. Who's the only person who knows what's going to happen tomorrow? God does. And that's clearly what James tells us here. If you boast that you have some level of control over what the future may hold, you are taking the place of God. And that is arrogance. And how bad is this? How bad is this arrogance? What does it say? Such boasting is evil. That's a tough word, right? That's a harsh word. So how do we respond to that? I was listening to some of the testimonies, and we have a lot of struggles in our assembly. We have a lot of people who are suffering. I hear what Jerry is saying, and Jerry texted me those pictures this week, and I'm sorry, brother, I didn't reply back to you because I didn't know what to say. It's just so tough. It's such a difficult situation. I know all of us have these own issues in our own lives. You think about Rajong and Philsian. Do you think about what Unikritan has been going through this week? When I heard about what Unikritan is going through, I thought we have to pray. We have to pray. Our prayer meetings have been fairly, not well attended. And then we wonder why these things happen. The Lord wants us to look to Him for our hope, look to Him for our sustenance, look to Him for our healing. When we try to find that in ourselves, when we try to plan our tomorrows, then we're not saying Lord willing, right? We're saying, me willing. It's my power, my strength, my ability to get this done. That's not what the Lord wants us to do. The Lord wants us to be like children before Him, right? Olivia is just beginning to learn how to walk and talk and do these things, right? She depends completely on Jensen and Stephanie to help her. That's the attitude we need before the Lord. We need to be like children before Him, to lay our complete willingness to let Him be in control. Let Him be the one that gives us our strength. And our response is to be gracious, have an attitude of gratitude, right? I use that all the time. Attitude of gratitude. It gets us so far. Humility is what we need. And actually James talks about in verses 7 through 10, he talks about us that we need to therefore submit to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. It's a very simple equation. Cleanse your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded. Lament and mourn and weep. Let your laughter be turned to mourning and your joy to gloom. Humble yourselves in the sight of the Lord, and He will lift you up. Are you feeling low today? Are you feeling like you need a little bit of a lift? Oh, I don't have to preach the words. I don't have to paraphrase. Humble yourselves in the sight of the Lord, and He will lift you up. True peace about the future comes when we let the Lord command our life, giving it over to Him completely. Now, verse 17 is almost a throwaway, right? It's almost a verse that we take out of context almost always. Verse 17 says, therefore, to him who knows to do good and does not do it, to him it is sin. You could take that verse out of context and use it in a lot of different ways, but let's put it into context. It is being put into the context here of us not worrying about the future, of us not trying to control our days ahead. That's the context. It says, therefore to him who knows to do good. So what is it that is to do good? It's to turn it over to God. Turn our future over to Him. To say that our life is bound up in our God and not bound up in ourselves. The world will tell us differently, right? The world tells us to take the bull by the horns, right? The world tells us your future is in your hands, right? Sounds like something you've heard, right? The world tells you that you can control how your future turns out. This passage tells us that it is the Lord who should be in charge of your future. If we want to conquer our fear for the future, we must conquer our pride and turn it over to the Lord. That is doing good. That's what it says. When we do that, when we turn it over to the Lord, if we let the Lord willing we shall live, if that's how we live our lives, then that is good, and it is not sin. These are strong words that James uses. Evil, sin, powerful reminders to us that our lives are so fleeting, so transient, that everything that we try to do to control it, to plan it, to make it turn out the way we want it to turn out, is like a flower that fades, a beauty that's there for a moment and then is gone. We need to let the Lord be in charge. Now, I am convicted when I say these things. Every time I come up to preach, I'm always preaching to myself first. Because I know when I'm going home, I'm going to hear it. Because I'm not like this. I'm not like this. I'm the person who wants to control the future. I have this. You probably have heard of this disorder. It's called OCD. You've heard of this? OCD? I have that, or at least some aspect of that. So for me, everything has to be perfect. You see me, I'm always fiddling, right? I'm always fiddling. Everything has to be just right. That's me in my weakness. That's me in my faithlessness saying, I'm going to try to control things to make it turn out right. And I need to know for myself first, before I talk to anyone else, that I have to turn it over to Him. Because if you look back over the course of my life, if you look over the course of your life, what has been the greatest blessing to you? Something that you did? Something you arranged? Something that you made? Or was it because God was in your life in one way or another? Maybe it's in the way that he brought your family to you. Like Saji was saying, he's in awe of how all these things came about. That's God. Even in our suffering, God is whispering to us. Even in our struggles, he is the one that stands with us. He is the one who cries at our bedside. He is the one that laughs with us when our children are laughing. He is the one that walks with us every step of the way. And only in eternity will we be able to look back and know how much he has worked all things together for our good. Because that's what he promises us in Romans 8:28. He promises that all things work together for good for those who trust him. So let's make that our goal. Let's say, if the Lord wills, we shall live and do this or that. Let's close in prayer.